Time did not exist in the hospital. Like a Las Vegas casino, there were no clocks anywhere, and the harsh fluorescent lighting remained equally bright during the entire stretch of visiting hours. Alice had asked once if they turned off the lights at night, but the nurse didn't seem to hear, or maybe she thought it was a joke. But in either case, she didn't respond, and so Alice didn't know the answer. Her father, Leonard Stern, was still in his bed in the center of the room, attached to more lines and cords and bags and machines than Alice could count, and had hardly spoken for a week, and so he wasn't going to tell her either, even if he did open his eyes again. Could he sense the difference? Alice thought about lying in the grass in Central Park in the summertime as a teenager, letting her closed eyelids feel the warmth of the sun, when she and her friends would stretch their bodies out on rumpled blankets, waiting for JFK Jr. to accidentally hit them with a frisbee. These lights didn't feel like the sun. They were too bright and too cold. Alice could visit on Saturdays and Sundays, and in the afternoon on Tuesdays and Thursdays, when her workday ended early enough that she could hop on the train and get to the hospital before visiting hours had ended. From her apartment in Brooklyn, the subway ride was an hour door-to-door, the 2-3 from Borough Hall to 96th Street, and then the local all the way to 168th Street. But from work, it was half an hour on the C train, a straight shot from 86th and Central Park West. Over the summer, Alice had been able to visit nearly every day, but since school had started, a few days a week was the best she could do. It felt like it had been decades since her father was still himself, when he looked more or less the way he had for Alice's whole life, smiling and wry, his beard still more brown than gray. But in reality, it had only been a month. He'd been on a different floor of the hospital then, in a room that felt more like an under-decorated hotel room than an operating theater, with a photograph of Mars that he'd torn out of the New York Times taped to the wall, alongside a photo of his ancient and powerful cat, Ursula. She wondered whether someone had taken those things and put them with the rest of his belongings, his wallet, his telephone, whatever actual clothing he'd been wearing when he checked in, the stack of paperback books he'd brought with him, or whether they'd been thrown away in one of the giant flip-top waste bins that lined the sterile hallways. When someone asked how her father was doing, Emily, who she shared a desk with in the admissions office, or Sam, her best friend from high school, who had 3 children, a husband, a house in Montclair, and a closet full of high heels to wear to her job at a terrifying law firm, or her boyfriend, Matt, Alice wished for an easy answer. The longer it went on, the more the question turned into an empty phrase, the way one might say, "How are you?" to an acquaintance passing on the sidewalk and keep walking. There were no tumors to excise, no germs to fight. It was just that many neighborhoods of Leonard's body were falling apart in a great, unified chorus. His heart, his kidneys, his liver. Alice understood now, as she never truly had before, how the body was a Rube Goldberg machine. And every time one domino or lever got knocked sideways, the whole thing would stop. When the doctors poked their heads into the ICU, it was just the word failure over and over again. They were all waiting for her father to die. It could be days or weeks or months. No one was quite able to say. One of the worst parts of the whole thing, Alice understood, was that doctors were almost always guessing. They were smart people, and the guesses were informed by tests and trials and years of experience, but they were guessing nonetheless.